Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating systemic framework called COMPART, which basically acts as a human coordination operating layer. If you've ever felt like your skills, your ambitions, and the actual opportunities available to you are completely disconnected, trust me, you are definitely not alone. We're breaking down a source text today that argues this disconnect isn't some personal failure on your part. It's actually a massive systems failure. So we're going to explore how COMPART aims to fix the broken mechanics of how we coordinate, how we discover opportunities, and ultimately how we build trust. Let's get into it. Let's start right at the root of the problem. There's a quote from the source material that really sets the stage perfectly. It says, "Human potential is abundant. Alignment is scarce." I mean, wow, that is such a striking way to look at the world, right? We are quite literally surrounded by incredibly talented, eager people. And yet, getting the right people in the right room, working on the right problem at the exact right time, it feels nearly impossible. The text makes a great point here. Our modern digital tools are fantastic at throwing information at us or keeping us endlessly consuming content, but they completely drop the ball when it comes to actually helping us coordinate our true potential. And really, the friction we all feel comes down to competing incentives. Current platforms, think your traditional social media or job boards, they optimize heavily for broadcasting. They just want you to passively scroll, shout your opinions into the void, or endlessly rack up these surface-level credentials. Compart, on the other hand, proposes a radically different baseline. What if an entire system was built just to match people based on mutual problem-solving and direct actionable contribution? It's a total shift from competing for eyeballs to actually finding exactly who you align with to get real things done.
Okay, so that brings us to part one, why coordination is broken.
To really understand the fix, we have to look at the broken system. Right now, our reality is highly fragmented and, honestly, full of friction. Think about it. If you want a job, you go to one site. Looking for a community, you go to another app entirely. Need a mentor? Well, you just kind of have to hope for a warm introduction. This constant context switching is exhausting. Plus, the networks we do join usually have super weak internal economies, meaning your actual contributions are practically invisible unless you're the loudest person in the room. COMPART's response is to bring all of this under one unified discovery umbrella. It structures your profile, makes your actions measurable, and surfaces aligned matches directly to you, cutting out all that friction. So the big, crucial takeaway from all these compounding failures is this sort of meta problem. The talent and the desire undeniably exist, but the coordination absolutely does not. See, organizations know their own internal systems, and individuals know their own work history, but they live in entirely separate, isolated data silos. Because there's literally no shared language or bridge connecting them, brilliant ideas just stall out, ambitious projects remain completely dormant, and these massive networks stay drastically underutilized. Which leads us perfectly into part two, meet the coordination layer. So what actually is COMPART? Well, it's important to clarify what it's not. It's not another social media app, it's not a CRM, a job board, or a DAO. It frames itself as an operating infrastructure, a routing system for human potential. It's not trying to be the next place you post a selfie for likes. Instead, it's aiming to be this unseen engine that deeply understands exactly what you have to offer, knows what a community or project desperately needs, and acts as the intelligent bridge between the two. To make this abstract idea a bit more concrete, the source outlines 5 core objects that make up the system's architecture. First up, we have profiles, which act as living identity models. Next is the discover function, serving as the matching and routing engine. Then comes the marketplace, which is where those matches turn into actionable tasks. After that is the network layer, allowing groups to function as living economies. And finally, the reputation and trust layer, which ensures that absolutely everything happening in the system is rooted in real, verified participation. Let's zero in on that first object for a second, profiles. Think about a traditional resume. It tells someone what your job title was 3 years ago, sure, but it completely ignores what actually gives you energy today, what your current capacity to contribute is, or what your goals are. Because old systems index humans so poorly, discovering opportunities is basically random, often based on existing privilege or algorithms that just want engagement. COMPART completely abandons that static model. Instead, it builds a structured, living profile based on your actual strengths, your energy patterns, and your network alignment. It's a game changer. All right, let's get into the mechanics, part 3, how the system works. So how does this whole thing actually run? The text explains that COMPART operates through 4 sequential loops, and these loops are what transform your intent into measurable activity and trust. It's a step-by-step process, taking you from simply stating who you are all the way to participating in an active, self-reinforcing economy. In the first two loops, indexing and discovery, people become indexed based on their observable contributions. Then, their specific intents become discoverable to the exact right matches based on shared goals. Let's say you express an intent, like, I need a collaborator for a new software build. The system doesn't just surface the most popular user or someone who paid for a sponsored ad. No, it calculates your needs, analyzes network overlap, and checks historical contributions to find your exact, perfectly aligned match. It's like a giant puzzle, and the system knows exactly where your piece fits. Then, social intent becomes measurable action in loops 3 and 4. Continuing our hypothetical, you find that perfect collaborator. The specific task for the build is routed to you both, and you complete it. Boom. That completion triggers the economic loop. Value is formally exchanged, your participation is tracked, and you are officially rewarded within the network. Over time, these repeated, successful exchanges make the network smarter and ensure your future matches are even more precise. It's a totally self-reinforcing gravity. And this illustrates how the economic loop solves a massive issue we face today: primitive trust. Right now, we rely on contextless, easily manipulated metrics to decide if someone is reliable. 5-star ratings, generic LinkedIn endorsements, or follower counts. But earned trust in COMPART is built entirely on an indisputable history of verified completed tasks. Your identity becomes something you actively earn through consistency and delivery, not something you project through a social media megaphone. Moving on to our final section, Part 4, the future of potential. If this coordination, discovery, and economic layer actually scales the way it's designed to, the macro implications are incredibly exciting. Think about it. We transition from just hoping people connect by chance to a world where education pathways become directly responsive to real projects and market needs. And perhaps most importantly, opportunity stops being gated by who you happen to know. Because reputation is based purely on verified contribution, hidden talent that lacks traditional social leverage suddenly becomes highly visible and easily discoverable. That is huge. This brings us to a fascinating takeaway from the explainer text. Smaller, aligned networks with shared incentive structures can actually start to coordinate as effectively as massive corporations. Historically, large corporations have the upper hand because they own the internal infrastructure to coordinate hundreds of people. But if COMPART provides that coordination infrastructure as a public layer, well, smaller distributed communities and localized microeconomies can suddenly punch way above their weight. They can execute highly complex projects without ever needing rigid traditional corporate hierarchies. Ultimately, COMPART isn't competing with single, standalone apps. It is aiming to be a programmable foundational layer for all human coordination. Think about it like this. Just as we have a foundational infrastructure for digital payments or for web hosting, COMPART is proposing an infrastructure for human alignment. It's a system that doesn't just hope value is seen, but actively measures it. It doesn't just hope people connect, but actively routes them to one another based on true, verified complementarity. I'll leave you to think on this profound final question from the text. What if human potential was routable rather than accidental? Imagine a reality where the exact moment you have a skill to offer or a passionate desire to learn something new, an underlying system routes you directly to the community or project that needs exactly what you have. No more screaming into the void, no more relying on lucky networking events, just verifiable contribution and perfectly aligned coordination. It's a massive, deeply inspiring vision for the future of how we work and connect. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer on the COMPART framework. Before you go, take a look at your own networks today and ask yourself, how much of this potential is just waiting to be coordinated?